Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Melo Meresco. We have another awesome guest today. We have Sonia Camacho. She's a rotational engineer working at Nike, and then she's also a podcaster, which I'm super excited to learn more about those two things. So, Sonia, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to be here and very honored to be a featured guest.
And I'm super excited, and I found out about you through TikTok and like the content that you create, and then like your podcast too. I was listening to your podcast, and I saw that we actually have one guest in common. You interviewed Itzel Oseguera.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so she was actually my first guest. So when I saw, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with the first question. Let's start with how you got started with like engineering and then got into the Nike job, and then from there I'll ask you, or even if it's like a sequencing of like how you started your podcast as well.
So for me, I got into engineering in high school. So I was very fortunate to go to a high school that had engineering courses offered. I was also very blessed to be born into a family of a mom who was a math major and, loves science. I also have an older sister. She's 3 years older than me. She was in the engineering classes. She was very into school and we were complete opposites at the time. And yeah, so when it came time to choose your electives in high school, my mom was like, you should really think about doing the intro to engineering courses because like your sister really liked them. I just wanted to do art 101 because all my girlfriends were doing it. And like in high school, you cannot be the only person, in a class alone. It's like the end of the world. So I ended up taking the intro to engineering course and I absolutely loved it. I decided to take robotics. I can't even remember the other classes that we had, but there was like four other classes and I took all of them. And I actually like fell in love with engineering. So when it came time to choose a major for college, I was like, well, I've done computer science 1, 2, and AP computer science. Like, might as well just keep it going. So I decided to do computer science in college at Oregon State University. And then yeah, I was in college during the pandemic and everything. So that was a little bit tough trying to get an internship and like trying to get one that's not fully remote or canceled. So eventually I landed the internship with Nike after my senior year. But because of COVID and everything, I decided to do the accelerated master's program. So I actually stayed at Oregon State University for 5 years and I came back with both degrees. And in between there, I was able to do the Nike internship, which ultimately led to my full time job.
So you were saying how you went into college, you had classes beforehand, so you kind of got fell in love with engineering. What were like some of those obstacles that you faced while being in like taking those classes? Because I've heard a lot where there's like not a lot of women in engineering and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So how was that experience for you? And then some other obstacles that you might have faced during that time.
Yeah, so definitely it was tough at the beginning because I remember even on my first day of school or my first day of classes in high school for the engineering classes, I walked in and someone was like, "Are you in the right room?"
Oh,
And like that made me so annoyed because I was like, even though I kind of didn't want to be in that class to begin with, I was like, what do you mean?
yeah.
So, there was only one other girl in the classroom. There
Oh
was a few
wow.
times I was the only girl in the classroom. And so that was definitely like an obstacle to overcome, but something that I feel like I hate to say it, but I kind of feel like I proved myself to my classmates and that was able to like get me a seat at the table kind of vibe,
Yeah.
like in robotics, like I kind of proved to them that like no, I actually am here, like I want to build and come up with different ideas and stuff. And so I feel like through that, those are how I like that's how I overcame the obstacles in high
Mm.
school. And then in college, it was a little bit of a different vibe. Like there were more girls in the classroom, but there was like an engineering sorority and they would kind of all like stick together and I wasn't in it.
Mm.
So I didn't have that many girlfriends in computer science in a lot of my classes. So a lot of the guys that were in the class, they became my friends. But something that's different from like high school and college is like in college, I feel like people are more supportive and like
Mm.
they're like my guy friends were way more accepting and supportive of me. So it wasn't like a ton of obstacles to overcome.
Mm.
There were a lot of times of like imposter syndrome though. Like I would look over and I'm like, oh my gosh, someone got like a 94 on the test that I like literally failed.
Oh man.
So that was definitely tough, but definitely I was really fortunate to have my sister, right? So
Yeah,
she always told me like go to office hours and, ask questions, even if it feels like silly or whatever. So I definitely did that a lot and just like persevered through it all,
mhm, yeah. How did you? Because did you during that time were you like reading any books or strategies like imposter syndrome? There's a lot of like personal development books and like videos, YouTube, all of that. Were you watching any of that to kind of help you overcome those things?
I wish I was. I'm not a reader. I am when it comes to like reading, yeah, I'm not the best at it. But I definitely like I don't know. There was like quotes from movies that I would remember. Like,
Yeah.
there was this one that was like, because she owns it, no one doubts her, or something
Mm,
like that. And I was like, okay, like that's a really good motto to live by. Like,
yeah.
if I just believe in myself, like you fake it till you make it kind of thing too.
Yeah.
Like, no one will doubt you if you walk around acting like you own the place. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
like a respectful way, not like an overly
And
confident
arrogant.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely think it was things like that. But if I were interested in reading like those kinds of books, like I definitely think that would help. And if anyone out there is like going through imposter syndrome or anything, like definitely try that out as a strategy.
Yeah.
But another thing that really helps you overcome imposter syndrome is like your community. So I joined clubs at Oregon State for women in computing. Like I said, I also had my
Mm,
sister and my mom, and I also had a therapist. So
mm,
it's one of those things where like I was really able to discuss what I was going through all the time with like my friends, my family, whoever. And that really helps you vocalize and kind of like feel heard about what you're going through. And a lot of times, like those connections can help you feel like less crazy. They're like, no,
yeah.
like you're totally valid for like feeling that,
Yeah, and like many times we feel like we're the only ones. But then once we start talking to other people, it's like, yeah, no, like I go through this too. And then that's where like conversations start happening. We're like, okay, how are you? I'll give you this advice if you want it, or why don't you try this or that? And that's really helpful. And then for your podcast, how did that all start? Was it like during college, like while you were
Yeah.
working?
So I started doing content creation like on Instagram and YouTube. I think it was my sophomore going into junior year of college.
Mm.
So that was like 3 years ago now, something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And so it just started as like photos and videos, like day in my life stuff. And then that kind of evolved into a side business because I started getting like sponsorships and stuff like
Mm.
that, which was very helpful during school, to have like
Yeah.
side income. And then so that kind of got me into the content creation, like uh I don't want to say influencer, but like the
Mm.
STEM content creator world. And
Mm.
there's a pretty big group of us on Instagram. And as a Latina, there's a lot of us, but there's not that many of us. So we kind of
Yeah.
created like group chats and this kind of
Mm.
community. And everyone's a little bit older than me. So they're all really great, like role models and mentors to like look up to. And I feel like they treat me like the baby of the group. They're always looking out for me, which is great. And they always give me such good advice. But basically, we had a group of about 10 of us that were selected to go to the SHEP National Conference. So
Mm.
that's Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers.
Mm.
And this is like fast forward, like I'm out of college because in college it was just like brand deals, fashion, engineering tips, studying tips,
Yeah.
and all that, which was great. And now I'm actually starting to like travel and do speaking events out
Oh,
of
wow.
this. So like even later today, I'm going to a high school and speaking, and
Oh,
getting
that's
paid for
awesome.
it. So it's like it's really like turning into more of like a business. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so this past year we went to the Shep National Conference in North Carolina. And it was one of those things where, like I said, I'm the youngest in the group. We were actually having lunch with some of the higher ups at Univision,
Oh, wow.
and everyone was like, "Hi, I'm like Elio, and I'm writing a book." And my friend Diana is like, "I'm Diana," and like I started a whole conference. And I'm
Mm.
like, "Hi, I'm Sonia." And like, I just graduated from Oregon State and like, I do content creation, but like, all of us do content creation, you
Yeah.
know? And so I was like, I knew I needed something else, like a business, whatever it would be to kind of like, again, I feel like constantly in life, we're looking for that one thing that makes you stand out, you know?
Mm.
And like,
Yeah.
once you reach that goal or whatever, once you becomes enough, like you need to find another goal to
Something
like,
else. Yeah.
So then I was like, I came back from the conference feeling so inspired. Anytime I hang out with that group, like we feel so inspired. And I think that translates to any group, like
Mm.
if they're good friends, you will feel like
Yeah.
motivated and inspired after you hang out with them. So came back from the conference and I was like, a podcast. And then I was like, but a short form podcast
Mm.
because like my attention span's really low from
Mm.
TikTok.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna try and make it short and sweet. And so yeah, January 1st of this year, 2023. So 5 months ago, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
This time is flying by. But yeah, I started the podcast and I'm starting to make a little bit of money off of
Mm.
it, slowly but surely. And then one day, I really hope that that'll become like my full-time job
Oh
in
wow.
who knows, like 5, 10 years, like
Yeah.
very far down the line. But it is cool to like be in this space. And I'm sure, like being
Yeah.
a podcast girly, it's so fun. And like, it is a lot of work though.
It is. It is. How? What were some of like those obstacles? Like at least for me, like at least in the beginning for me, the sending the emails was pretty hard. So for you, how was that
Yeah.
process in the beginning? What were some obstacles that you faced?
So the obstacles, I didn't realize it would be this difficult, like
Mm.
just from the first thing. So like I said, I had that group of friends. I was
Yeah.
like, hey guys, I think I'm gonna do a podcast. And they were all like, of course, like, oh my gosh, like interview me. Like, and then once I started posting about it, but I realized I didn't want it just to be STEM or engineering
Mm.
because, I mean, that is inspiring, but also like I think that there are other Latinos and Latinas out there that like could benefit from hearing lawyers, doctors,
Yeah.
artists. Like there's so many people, like options are endless.
Yeah.
Um, and we like need to know that because like we need to hear those stories so that we know we can like the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I was like, okay, well now I need to start like recruiting
Mm.
people who are not in the STEM industry because I could find a million people in the STEM industry. And so I actually set up like a Google form and I
Mm.
just like posted, I was like, hey, like tell your friends, like if you want to be featured, like
Mm.
fill this out. Cause that was another tough thing is like doing all the research on your own about someone can be very difficult.
Yeah.
And so like it really helped having people even give me 1 to 2 sentences about
Mm.
them. And then like an image and whatever. So I think like kind of getting that all set up. And then equipment too. I was really fortunate to have Sure sponsor me.
Oh wow.
But like getting set up and like making sure I have a space and, everything was very difficult as well. But it was one of those things where I actually got the idea in November and then I literally started
Mm.
putting things out in January. So it was very fast paced. Like
Yeah.
I really had to get everything together. So I'm still learning to this day.
Yeah, no, I definitely could relate. At least for me, actually took me a bit longer because I had the idea like on March of last year, so literally like about a year
Okay.
ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
But I was like working at a job that I didn't like and then like so that like messed up with my mindset stuff. So that year I really just worked on myself, like trying to have the courage to start the podcast. And
Yeah.
then on late January, that's when I sent the emails. I was like, fuck, I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna send the emails.
Yeah.
If they reply, then like whatever. And now that you say about the Google Forms, I might do that too. Because I'm
Yeah.
one of my things is like I wanna do like different careers, like weird ones, like
Mhm.
woman race car, what is it? Race car driver, or
Mhm.
I don't know, works at the circus or something. Like like weird stuff
Yeah.
that people don't think like you could do a career out of, but you could make money out. Like you can make money out of it as long as you're like passionate and like know the strategies to do
a
so.
100%.
Yeah. For you, what were like some, at least in the podcast, like what were like some of the stories that you kind of like were like super inspired by, or at least the ones that you remember like now out of the top of your head? Because like
Yeah.
talking
Well,
with women is like really, or like individuals is like just learning about their stories is really awesome. So yeah, sorry.
no, you're totally good. Yeah, I 100% agree. It's like so motivational and inspiring. I think Rachel Gomez, the founder of Viva La Bonita, she
Mhm.
was one of my favorite episodes because, as a business owner and as a mom, she's just doing so much. And I think business owners in general, like,
Yeah.
I just think that it's like, you have to take, I always say this in my episodes where I'm like, you take that leap of faith that like everything's going to go fine and like that you believe in yourself and like I
Yeah.
think that's so inspiring, especially like as Latinas, like, we're not really taught that like everything is gonna be okay if you just drop everything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So we're really taught that like job security or like, security in whatever you do and like
Yeah.
just stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's super inspiring. And then I think her name's Ambad, but she was a PhD student, I believe,
Yeah.
or maybe a master's student. I think she was PhD, but she just had some of the best advice for students, like, and she was an immigrant as well, and so,
Mm-hmm.
like, those stories are super inspiring about, like,
Yeah.
because I'm 4th gen on my mom's side and 2nd
Oh
gen on my
wow.
dad's side, but I really do believe I had more of, like, a 4th gen experience,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but I learn and I love and appreciate my culture, but
Yeah.
really hearing it from, like, someone else's perspective, like, very first generation, like, they came here themselves, like, left their parents back home kind of
Oh
thing, like,
wow.
that is super inspiring because 'cause I'm like, I feel like I was so babied here in the US. I'm like, I don't even know if I could ever do that, you
Yeah.
know? So, definitely those episodes have been some of my favorite, but, yeah, and then just, like, getting to interview artists like Debbie Hollow and Eddie Zuko, it's like these people that I've been listening to forever, and I'm like, and I've interviewed them, like, okay, you know?
Yeah, it's such a
So,
flex. How how
yes.
how were you able to like interview them? Like did you email them, or like they were like did they hit you up like,
Yeah.
oh
So
you,
Desi and I have actually been following each other since like 2020 or 2021.
mm,
And so we had like talked over DM and stuff. So I just like
mm,
sent him a voice memo and I was
yeah.
like, hey, I want to interview you.
Oh,
And
that's
he was like,
awesome.
yeah. And then actually the Eddie Zuko story is actually hilarious because I was like, I went and met Rachel Gomez and
Mhm.
I was like telling her we were like listening to his music and I was like, oh my gosh, I tried to get tickets to his concert.
Mm.
But they're like all sold out. Like, I can't believe he's going on tour. And then she knows his like band manager,
Oh wow, yeah.
And so she was like, oh, like, I can like set you guys up. And I was like, oh my gosh, no way.
Wow.
And so I was able to get his interview out right before his tour and everything.
Oh
So that was,
wow.
it's kind of just been like by chance. But
Yeah.
once you get like one or two of those under your belt, like now I feel like I look more credible. Like
Yeah.
whoever I reach out to next, I'm like, okay, I've interviewed other artists too.
Yeah, no. And I saw like the first interview that he did with, I believe her name's like the one, I forgot her name, but she's the first Mexican astronaut.
Oh,
Um,
Katya.
God, yeah, yeah, there you go. Like
Yeah.
that's someone I've been wanting to like send him an email to, because like I found
Mhm.
about her through TikTok. I didn't even know, like, honestly, I didn't know anything about her until then. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And then listened to your podcast. Like that's the first one. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like meeting different people, it's just such an amazing thing. I want to
Yeah.
go back to like your job, because you've had experience. Oh, your family has like 9 to 5 jobs. That would be a
Mhm.
9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
So for you, how was that experience, since you already had like family members who already had that? And then like maybe we could move into like the money conversation, because
Mhm.
like having a 9 to 5, like you can say you have more stability and you have your hours. So your
Yeah.
relationship with money. So let's start with like, how was your experience with 9 to 5, and then I'll see about the
Yeah.
money. Yeah.
So I like to really be open about everything in my interviews and it's not something I'm like ashamed of or anything. Like I'm very proud of my parents. They
Yeah.
grew up with nothing. They were very, very poor growing up.
Mm.
And they both went to like Ivy League schools. They worked
Oh,
very hard. They went to school for my parents are crazy. They went to like 12 years of school each. Like
12 years.
they went to a lot of school because they were a little bit of older parents for my sister and I.
Mm.
So like they have lived they lived some lives, you know what I mean? So I was very fortunate to grow up in the household of two lawyers.
Oh
And
wow.
so they never pressured my sister and I into being successful or like you have to go to higher
Mm.
education. Like I feel like when you grow up in a household where higher education um where there is higher education, like you're just more motivated from within,
Mm. Yeah.
there was no one telling me you have to get an A on this test or whatever. Like I was so competitive with
Mm.
myself. I was like, I must get an A. So and it's all about kind of like seeing what they did for us and then planning ahead for like how I want to be. So
Mm.
yeah, like my parents were successful and they um they gave my sister and I whatever really we needed or wanted
Yeah.
growing up and very grateful for that, but we also didn't take advantage of that. Like I feel like my sister's also she's a mechanical engineer at Lockheed
Mm.
Martin.
Oh.
And so we both became engineers, but we kind of saw it as like, well, how can we do better for the next generation? Like how can we keep this like generational like change or like education like going. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So we both study math and science, and like at
Mm,
times, of course, it was not the easiest thing to do. But we got into it, and then starting a 9 to 5 and like my internship and everything, it was difficult because I'd only had like retail experience
mm,
before. So
oh,
retail and also like food industry. And
mm,
that's something I'm very grateful for my mom to have really pushed my sister and I, is that um although we didn't need jobs in high
mm,
school or college, she really pushed us to, you know, get these experience like with social interactions and stuff
yeah.
and all of that. And then we were able to like, you know, keep the money and learn the value of a dollar and
Yeah.
everything. Because like sometimes I like look compared to like my other friends who didn't have jobs, and I'm like, oh, I'm very glad that I, you know, learned how to work in certain industries beforehand. So but yeah, it's very different than having a retail job and working with like the public, and then,
Mm,
you know, going to work and working on certain projects and like all of that. It is more difficult. But it's one of those things where I feel like, kind of like you said earlier, you have to find like your passion and what you do to make it fun and exciting. Cause
yeah.
like every day that I go to work at Nike, like I am so excited. I finally found like a good team, a good
Mm,
project, and like every single day I'm like very
yeah.
excited to go. And I also do things to kind of make it more interesting. So like I do my get dressed with me things on
Mm,
TikTok, you know, like
yeah.
I find those little moments throughout the day that I can like, you know, make it a bit more exciting, you
Yeah.
know, because it can get a little tiring being
Yeah.
9 to 5 and all that.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think at least with the books I've been reading, it's like you really gotta be intentional with what you do. And then like even there's like times where like even if you're passionate about it, there's still gonna be those rough times. So being able to like you know how you said like get ready with me type of videos
Mhm.
or it helps you kind of go through your day. So that's pretty nice. What were
Yeah.
my next question would be like what were some of the skills that you had to learn that you maybe didn't get through retail jobs or in school, like whatever. What skills did you have to learn in your job that kind of you would recommend other people, like you know, you should start learning these
Yeah.
skills.
Well, definitely like this is a skill you can learn like from retail and from school and stuff, but social skills and learning how to talk to people, and trust me, like everyone, I was not an extrovert my entire life. I was a very introverted for a long part of my life. And I just one day was like, okay, you're gonna have to snap out of it. You're gonna have to just be like confident and social. But that is like one of the main things that I feel like can land you a job, is having that like personable skill.
Yeah.
And people don't really realize that, like, when you're working in a group project at school, or like if you're trying to sell someone a pair of jeans at Old Navy, like those are like the little skills that you can use as practice and really build yourself up. And a lot of tech companies now are doing less technical interviews and more behavioral interviews, because they're
Mm,
realizing that they're getting all these really smart people who can code really well. But in industry, you're always working on a team. So it's like one
mm,
group project forever, right?
yeah.
And so they're like realizing that, okay, we're hiring all these people who don't know how to be social in a like in a group setting. So yeah, so definitely focus on your social skills, and then learning how to discuss with different types of people. Like I will say,
Mm,
like on my team there are definitely people who act more like my parents, right? Like they have a certain authority. They like they just they're a little older, so they may not understand like
mm,
everything that, you know, there's little differences, right? And there's people who work really technically, or like
mm.
people who aren't very good. I have this one coworker who's like, he takes a lot of breaks because like he can't really do like long spurts of focus, if that
Focus
makes
work.
sense, right? So it's like learning how to work with individuals themselves is
Mm,
really crucial and key in industry, and also like in school. Like if anybody's like going into a group project, like everyone's brain works
yeah.
differently, and you have to navigate that.
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like there's not a class on like how to navigate people, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
um but that's like the one thing I would say is like social skills, and like learning how to read and analyze people is huge.
Mm. That's actually interesting that you say that because there's this book I haven't finished, but I started reading. It's the quiet. I think it's just quiet, and then like
Mhm.
something introverts. Like some, it's about like introverts and like living in an extroverted world. And
Uh-huh.
and it's really interesting how you say that they're starting to do like behavioral interviews.
Yeah.
Because in the book it kind of like talks about how the world is kind of like structured for extroverts and like for them to succeed, and then
Yeah.
introverts that kind of have to like
Catch up
catch up and
and
like do stuff that they might have not want to do. Like I
hmm
don't know. It's just it's really interesting that you're saying that. I really recommend that book, even though I'm like not even like halfway there. But yeah, it's being an introvert in an extroverted world. It's definitely a thing that we have to like start kind of like figuring out how to balance it because we also
hmm
because sometimes like being an extrovert can and being an introvert in an extrovert world you can like get drained um
Yeah,
so it's really of living intentionally but also like knowing how to work with your team and stuff because that's also
yeah,
important like you don't want to be by yourself the whole time or I don't know
yeah,
maybe some people do and but
yeah.
my next question or my next section would be like going back into like the money conversations so
Oh yeah.
you mentioned how your parents like kind of taught you like the value of like the dollar and like being able to work and stuff. So
hmm
what were like some other either limiting beliefs or beliefs that you had about money that you maybe didn't think was serving you, and then how has your relationship evolved and like and things that you learned like strategies over anything or things that you started doing now that have
Yeah.
helped you with your relationship with money.
Well, my relationship with money, oh man. I'm like, oh boy. So something that I feel like I learned a lot is that well, I learned like it sounds so stupid, but I learned how when you make a salary, you don't get to take home that whole salary, right? Like you get a paycheck, you have bills to pay, and like by the end of it, there's hardly anything left. Um, so that was something I learned. And then because like originally, like you asked, like I just believed, okay, like when I get my salary, I'm gonna take it all home and I'm gonna be so rich or whatever. And it's like, no, you have to like like existing is so expensive. So but I will say that my first like real realization with like a big girl paycheck, when I first started Nike and I got my first paycheck and going shopping with my mom growing up, it wasn't like I could just pick any, like, we weren't
Mhm.
going to like Nordstrom or anything. Like we were going to Macy's and Kohl's, always looking for deals kind of
Yeah.
vibe, right? And so, if it was like on sale and a good deal, like of course I could get it, but it wasn't like I was picking out like $100 jeans and
Mhm.
like being able to get whatever I want.
Yeah.
So when I first got my paycheck, I was like, oh wait, I can kind of get whatever I want now, right? Like, and so for my first, I would say 3 paychecks, I bought like the most random stuff. But I was also like furnishing my home and everything. So
Mhm.
um I guess I give myself some credit there, but like it was just little things that I was like, okay, I know the value of a dollar, but I'm not like fully
Yeah.
you know, putting it to good use, whatever. And so
Intentional.
and yeah, I was not intentional at all about my money. But now I still don't have like an Excel sheet because that just seems like
Mm.
boring and annoying to me. But I'm really good now about like choosing my battles, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like I used to go I used to go into Ross Dress for Less and like buy a bunch of different like outfits and stuff. And now I'm like, okay, you don't need to do that. And then like going out on the weekends and like really just deciding like, oh, this is sorry, like little random tangent, but I have stayed at work now until like 7 p.m. most days to
Oh
like
wow.
play sports after work. Like luckily
Mm.
Nike we're so sports driven that like
Mm.
I can do all my meetings and then I can play volleyball and pickleball, whatever.
Oh
Like
wow.
I have the luxury to be able to stay on campus, but staying on campus keeps me from spending money and I love it. So if anyone listening, like if you can maybe stay an extra hour on like your school campus or I don't know, do go on a walk, do something that doesn't get you to spend money. I think that you'll see a difference there too.
Mm.
But yeah, my relationship with money now, it's good. I just have like a lot of learning to do and I finally started saving. Like finally started seeing my bank account going up because
Mm.
like I said, there's just so many bills that you have to pay and
Yeah.
like and there's also like monthly subscriptions that, like Amazon and stuff where I'm like, oh my gosh, like why are they taking my money? But yeah, and I think something that my mom has always taught me too is like everything will be okay. It's not the end of the world to like stress over money. Like money does come and go, but
Mm.
obviously like in an intentional and smart way. Like don't just
Yeah.
blow it all. But I think one time I was crying because I had like unexpected car troubles. So like
Mm.
people know like if you have an unexpected expense in a month, it sucks because you
Yeah.
are projected to save X amount. And then it's like, oh, well, there goes half of that because I had this unexpected
Yeah.
thing. So I was like crying to her, and she was like, it's not the end of the world. Like, So she's really helped me kind of define what money means, and like that it's like everything is gonna be okay. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm still learning a lot with in terms of that. But yeah, it's crazy.
No, I think like especially like us, I mean you're like for example like we still have those like money beliefs like they're not just from our parents, they're like from generations
Hmm.
before, so we have to actively and consciously start debunking them pretty much and start transforming them into better ones. Like at least for my family it was like there's like that at least in the Mexican community there's the belief that you have to work like all the like 24 hours pretty much so you can like
Hmm.
kind of live by. And now that I'm learning like no, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
It's like you work your hours, you work strategically so you could earn more while working less hours, and being intentional with your money too. Like right now recently I interviewed Gabi, she's from RPF Education, and I did a money
Uh-huh.
coach session with her. So she's like
Cool.
helping me do. I need to now build my emergency fund because I had built one before, but because I quit my job, I kind of spent it all, pretty much
Yeah.
like on rent and stuff. But now I have to build it up again, and then I have to open my Roth IRA, and then
Hmm.
my save up my emergency fund for in a high yield savings account. So all of that you start learning, and then it's kind of it's in a way it's like frustrating because you kind of have to start it like yourself, but in another
Hmm.
way it's like you're really grateful for it because you get to learn and you get to share it to your family. I get to
Yeah.
like tell my cousin that okay, you need this. My mom like, mom, you
Yeah.
gotta open a high yield savings account, like even though you don't. And I think another stuff like I talk about it with Maribel from Our Wealth Matters. She's another money coach, and but she focuses a lot of like immigrants and like people who don't have
Hmm.
papers. And my mom's one of them. Like my parents don't are undocumented, so you kind of have
Hmm.
to go a step further and like figure out like is
Right.
this bank helps or accepts undocumented people. So it's a lot of learning and a lot of like building that generational wealth. So it's
Yeah.
pretty awesome like to kind of have those two experiences.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thing you want to say about money? Like, actually, do you have
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, go ahead.
No, no. Ask your question.
No, I was gonna ask like what were some of the beliefs or like the sayings that you kind of heard when while growing up about money, and then you could share.
Um, Yeah, let me try and think about the sayings and stuff. Oh, well, money doesn't grow on trees. I
Uh-huh.
always heard that because I feel like I'm not gonna lie, like I was a pretty like spoiled kid. Like I was a
Mm.
brat as a kid, like I would cry if I couldn't have a Barbie and
Mm.
stuff like that. Um, but so money doesn't grow on trees. And then like I remember my parents always being like, one day you're gonna learn the value of a dollar and everything. But something that my mom always helped and that it helps now with the social media stuff is like I said, we didn't need to have jobs in high school. So like when I was a hostess, my mom was like, she let me keep all my tips.
Oh.
She would make me put my paychecks into so I could like monitor my spending and all that.
Mm.
But she really let us like keep our tips or whatever it may be. And so now with like social media, that's something where she's like, okay, well, like any money you get from social media is kind of like you need to learn that like, yeah, you can either decide to put some of it into your savings
Mm.
and whatever, like kind of have it grow, or you
Yeah.
can use it as your fun money, you know?
Mm.
And so that's really helped me now, like, kind of decide where to put my money and
Yeah.
everything. Because of course, when I first started, I was like, okay, like every time there's like a couple $100s, I'm like, yay, let's go spend it. And now it's like, okay, but that couple $100s could like sit in my account and like make it
Yeah.
look nice over time. So, yeah, it's definitely like I don't have like that many sayings that they said or anything,
Yeah.
but I definitely would say that a side business or like some sort of side stream income for anyone is a great idea because it helps you kind of differentiate. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I look at my girlfriends who work at Nike with me and I'm
Yeah.
like, how could you just rely on your corporate income?
Um,
Like, because like I said, all the bills and everything. And I'm like, where do you get your fun money?
yeah.
Like tonight, I think we're gonna go to a bar, and I'm like, "Well, how are you guys gonna pay for your drinks?" You know what I mean? Because I'm
Yeah.
like, all my money from my paycheck, like I put it in my savings.
Mm.
So it's one of those things where if you have that, it really gives you a lot more like freedom,
Yeah.
to kind of to live your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like one thing now, at least it's been you could say trendy, where you
Mhm.
start having an extra side hustle and like
Yeah.
multiple streams of income. Because one paycheck, especially depending on the area that you live, like if you live in
Mhm.
California, if you live in New York, like rent is expensive, and like your whole paycheck is going
Yeah.
just to rent. So yeah, having that, and that's pretty much like my reason why I started content creation, even though I'm still like trying to figure it out. And then
Mhm.
podcasting, because I've also been struggling with like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, even though I'm like
Yeah.
22, it's like, I still don't know. And I started this podcast just to like start figuring it out, like start
Mhm.
something, even though and maybe this might not be like my long-term career or full-time
Mhm.
business job, but at least I'm starting something, I'm learning from like
Yeah.
amazing women and like different careers. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. My since we're almost out of time, my last two questions are so my first question, my second to last question is that how you say it? My first question. Let's say my
Yeah.
first question is, what were those experiences that what were yeah what were those top experiences that you had during either your job as a rotational engineer, like getting your internships, all of that, or even like your podcast? What were like those top things like you were like, I can't believe this happened. This brand wanted to collaborate this interview, like what were those top
Yeah.
experiences?
Well, definitely like a little side tangent, because I forgot to mention this earlier, but so I usually in your junior year, I'm like using my fingers to kind of symbolize it. So usually in your junior year, going into your senior year in the summer, you have an internship in like corporate America, right?
Yeah.
So I applied to like what is it? Nordstrom's and Nike, because like I was very interested in apparel and engineering, right? Um, like, but more of like an apparel company rather than like Google, who's like a tech
Mm.
first company. I got rejected from my top companies
Oh
that
no.
year. And then so then like after my senior year, that's when I applied again to all the other internships.
Mm.
And I had to study really, really hard because I was like, okay, last year you didn't study at all and you like thought you would get in. And then I ended up getting offers from both of like my top two companies
No.
after my senior year, after studying a lot more. So that's something that I feel like people, they find me on social media, they like it. Obviously social media is like a highlight reel, right?
Mm.
And so you don't really talk about like these failures or these
Yeah.
experiences. So I really like to include that because I'm like, my road to where I am now was not always perfect.
Yeah.
Like I did go through some bumps. So that was one of those experiences where I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to decide between Nike and Nordstrom. Like that's
Yeah.
an amazing, like, whereas the year before I was crying in the library because they were like, sorry, like you got cut.
Yeah.
So that was definitely one of them. And then I think um something that happened a lot this year through the podcast and just social media and stuff is I've been having a lot of these more speaking opportunities. Like I told you today, I'm going to go speak at a high school, and I've been really able to just connect with so many different organizations like around the United States. And I feel like as like Latinas, you can relate to what I'm about to say, but I recently spoke at a digital literacy learning class in New
Mm.
York. It was through Zoom. I wish I could have been
Mm.
flown out. But so it was over Zoom, and it was like people like my mom's age, like
Oh
trying
wow.
to learn different like, learn about more about like tech and just
Mm.
things. I did a presentation on SMART goals, which I've known what a SMART goal is for like a very long time. So I was like, oh, like I feel like they're all gonna know what it means, but literally none of them knew. And
Oh
so
wow.
I was like, wow, it's such a wake up call that like I'm very privileged to have the education that I had, and like I need to be sharing this. And so
Mm.
I told my mom all about it. I showed her the pictures, and like she told me, she was like, I'm so proud of you. I literally cried for like
Oh.
an hour straight because I mean, like you probably relate. We don't hear that
Yeah.
a lot. Like
No.
even graduating with like 2 degrees, my parents were like, good job. Like obviously they did say they were proud of me, but like
Yeah.
of course they're gonna say it on graduation day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so it was definitely one of those things where I was like, oh my gosh, like pinch me. My mom's proud of me. So that was definitely like a so cool moment. And then um working with like Amazon
Oh wow.
and yeah, like they helped me furnish my apartment.
Oh, that's
Um
awesome.
yeah, so things like that where and like working with Princess Polly and Express. So like I don't have to go shopping. I hardly ever go to the mall unless it's for makeup because
Mhm.
brands will send me clothes.
Mm.
And so those are kind of pinch me moments, like, wow, little Sonia would be like, oh my gosh, we're getting free clothes, like, yay,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of moments that I think just help. They help with my overall life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, that cuts out a piece of my budget. And then working with Amazon, like, I have an Amazon subscription. I can't believe I worked with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stuff like that is really cool. Just really anything that led me up to like get to the point of where I am today. And
Yeah.
then of course, something that I already mentioned, but I love to highlight again is like really once you get to a place where you feel like super confident and happy, giving back to all types of
Mm.
communities, like that is the most rewarding thing in the world to like try and
Yeah.
be able to like share our knowledge and our expertise or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And congrats on all
Thank
the
you.
things that you've been able to like collabs and the conferences, like that's the speaking engagements, that's really, really awesome.
Mhm.
I kind of asked like what was the first one that like how did that happen before I ask the second question, the last question?
I'm trying to think what was my first. Oh gosh. It was like virtually to a classroom, and then like I've spoken at a lot of different classes since
Mm,
then, and then um yeah, it's just like through word of mouth and like and through
mm.
Shep as well, because people are like, oh, we saw that you spoke at like UC Davis, like can you
Oh,
speak at ours,
yeah.
and so it's just like kind of a snowball effect of
Mm.
different classes and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, my
sorry, I'm like I
last,
don't know the
yeah,
exact one, but
no, no, it's fine. And then my last question would be like for those who want to start something, whether it's a career, a side hustle, business, a hobby even, but they feel like que no se lo merecen. Like, yeah, this is not
Mhm.
for me. Like, what pep talk or advice would you give them?
And I get this question and I always have the same answer, and it's so cheesy because I work at Nike, but literally
Just
just
do
do it.
it.
Because when I was a freshman in college, I wanted to be on YouTube and everything. I was so nervous that like
Mm.
the other girls in the dorm would make fun of me, but I wanted to do a dorm tour so bad. And I look back and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done it. But it
Yeah.
was one of those things that when I started content creation, I was like, it was during a pandemic, and I was just like, you know what? Like, F this, I'm gonna do it. Like, I don't care what people think about me.
Mm.
And so it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I just have to do it. Like,
Yeah.
I won't know until I try. And same with the podcast, like my podcast doesn't get that many views at all,
Mm.
but every day or every time that I put out an episode, I'm like, let's just do it. And like, who
Yeah.
knows? Like, and maybe it'll help one
One
person,
person. Yeah. Yeah.
And then and we can go over, it's fine. But what was I gonna say? Um, oh dang it, there was something I was gonna say. Oh, right. Also feeling like um I don't know if this really relates to what you asked me, but before I even like did any of those speaking events or my podcast, I never felt like I was worthy enough, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like, cause I was like, oh, who's gonna want to
Yeah.
hear my story? Like, no way. But ever since like sharing my story and starting the podcast, like, it's had really good reaction and response.
Mm.
So it's one of those things where like if you don't feel worthy or you don't feel like you're enough to start doing what you want to do, you most definitely are, but you
Yeah.
just literally have to do it.
Yeah, and it literally goes back with mindset because usually the person or the thing that holds us back is ourselves. So
Yeah.
starting like either like going to a therapist, reading personal
Mhm.
development books, strategies, affirmations, visualizations, like all of that. Like if you start building that confidence like little by little, and then like you get the
Yeah.
courage to just start. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
no,
my friend Steph, she also started making me like every month I have to write down all the cool stuff that I've done,
mhm,
because
yeah,
I feel like it really helps us like right now when you ask me like what are your wow moments, I'm
yeah,
like I could look back at them, and it
yeah,
especially as like Latinas, like though having that like record of like what we're doing
yeah.
is just so inspiring to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, actually for me, I what I do in at the end of the month in social media, I post like my wins. It's
Oh, I love
more
that.
like podcasts and like social media. So it's like, oh, like I interviewed 4 women today or this month and I posted or put my 4 episodes this month and like I earned I think
Mhm.
last one was like earned $1 in Amazon. So,
Oh yeah.
those little things they were like at the end of the year is gonna be like you'll feel like you didn't do much or it was just the
Right.
same year as last year. But then you look back at the wins, it's like no, this was not the same as last year, and you're actually like starting to do, at least for me, is like you're starting to do more than you would have done like the past few years. So yeah. Oh well, I want to thank you, Sonia, so much for like being here for this awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it. For those who want to learn more about you, want to like shoot you a message for like to learn more about engineering or just your content creation as well. Like, what are your social medias? How could people reach you
Yeah.
out? Your podcast, all of that.
So I'm at Sonia Sonia__ Macho Macho
Mhm.
on TikTok and Instagram. I also have Cuentame con Sonia Camacho on Instagram, but you can find that from my other bio. And
Mhm.
then I'll send you my website link. And like,
Mhm.
I don't know when you put this up, you can put it in the bio
Yeah,
because that's where people can find literally everything about me
everything.
and everything. So, yeah, but thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation and like I'm just so excited for you and I can't wait to see, where all of this
Where
goes.
all of
I'm
this
so
goes.
glad we're connected.
Yeah, no, and this is like how to say, like it's a mutual thing. Like I can
Mhm.
see your growth as well with your podcast, your career. Like probably like in 2 3 years you'll be like a millionaire with like a lot of brand
I hope
collabs and all that.
so.
Yeah, I know, no, it's already there. Like it's manifestation, right? So it's already
Yeah.
there. It already happened. And okay, so thank you again. And then for those who are listening, don't forget to give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, 'cause that supports us. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, all of that. Share with your friends, your engineer friends who want to learn more about Sonia. And I'll definitely leave your links below. And with that being said, thank you, Sonia, again. And I'll see everybody else in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.